Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. We're here for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections. It's January 12th at 10 a.m. We'll do as we usually do and ask everybody here on the panel and the staff and the people in the audience to please make sure your cell phones are turned off. Make sure mine is. And we will go into a review and approval of the agenda if everybody's ready.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. The motion carries. The agenda is approved. We'll move into communications and public comment. Speakers will get 2 minutes each. Ms. Bodison, can you just give a shout out when they've got 30 seconds left and then a time? And I'll just go in the order that I received these. Jason Frazier, you're up first.
Can you hear me? All right. Yes, my name is Jason Frazier from Roswell. Today I'd like to ask for a status update on the 7,000 duplicate registrations that I submitted in December. I'm curious if you guys have started working those, and if so, how many? Also, are you checking this time for overlapping voting history? And that second question is very important. As you know, I turned in 5 people that I turned in last year. Upon further investigation, those 5 people were registered twice. Thus, 10 unique IDs. All 10 of those IDs were given credit for voting in the same election. That's why I turned it into the state. They gave it back to you. I don't know if you guys are working on that. If you're not, and I want to be very clear, I don't know if these people voted once, twice, or not at all, but they were given credit for voting in the same election. Thus, I'd like those to be looked at. And those are just 5 of many. So once those are looked at, I can happily give you some more, and we can get to the bottom of this. Furthermore, so I turned in 13,000 duplicate registrations last year, and then another 7,000 in December. Clearly, the problems have not been resolved on why duplicate registrations are being added to the rolls. We should be checking. If somebody's already registered, don't add them again. If they move, move the registration. Don't just add a second. That allows double voting, that allows problems, and it also costs us a lot of money maintaining multiple registrations to the same person. Additionally, 2 Mondays ago, I gave you 1,000 voter challenges at UPS stores, FedEx stores, et cetera. Hopefully you guys are working on those. Last Monday, the Monday of this week, I gave you 1,000 bad addresses. Most of these addresses don't exist. Next Monday, I'll give you another 1,000. The Monday after that, another 1,000. There's a lot of these. I hope that, that you guys can work these and also change your process so you are checking an address to see if it exists. I know some of these are typos, but others I don't know. But either way, you should be checking to see if an address is legitimate before adding to the rolls. And again, that leads to duplicate registrations that I've seen as maybe you typo one, it doesn't move with an NCOA, thus you leave one on the rolls, you re-register. What was that? Was that 15 seconds? Thank you. So it leads to more problems in the future. So I'm hoping, and I want to work with you guys. I want the process correct. I don't want to just be giving you challenges. I want the process fixed. That's my goal here. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Lucia Frazier. Next, after her, will be Matt Rowanchak.
Good morning, Lucia Frazier from Roswell. So the election process has been very weak in all of 2022. We really need a leader that understands the Georgia law and creates efficient processes that protect our ballots and save our tax money. So the voter registration process, was just explained. There's still way too many things being repeated and repeated all year long. The observers that are being locked out, we really need officers that protect observer rights, not just poll worker rights. It's like they have no clue what the rights are of an observer, so they don't enforce them. They don't even look at it. Shift work, no overtime. Everybody should be shift. There were people falling asleep at their desk while checking people in. Not complying with open records requests. That's been happening a lot. Recertifying before documentation. Training that's inconsistent. Releasing personal info, whether on accident, I don't know. Voter outreach not being even. I know that was talked about last time a little bit. The team, they have a really great presentation, and they just need to look at the map and make it more even. You don't need to wait for the commissioner to request it. And then uneven wait times, so during the voting process, I'm not sure what was going on between the north and the south and why
30
it was so
seconds.
uneven. But that's just numbers. So that's real simple math to figure out, you know, who's in each precinct, and number of clerks will solve that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt Rowanchek, and after that, Earl Ferguson.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, board. Happy New Year. It's about, is there a clock or just a notification?
You get 2 minutes. Ms. Bodison will tell you when you have 30 seconds left, and then she'll tell you
Okay.
time. And at that point, if you just wrap up your sentence. And as you begin, would you please tell us your address, please?
Matt Rowanzak, Fulton County resident. I think that'll do.
That's actually not your address. Could you just give us a full address, please?
It's Roswell.
Thank you.
So about this time every year, right, we reflect on the previous year, and we look forward to improving, you know, ourselves and whatever our goals are for the new year. So I wanted to look back at 2022 and some of the items I noticed. One, we shut out public observers both before opening and after closing. That is a violation of Georgia law. There was confirmation in one of these meetings that there's no verification process for new registrations. That's a violation of federal law. There's a 19-day work requirement. So my question is, why are we using temp agencies? Because their bread and butter is shift work, but we're not using them for that. It obstructs the community from volunteering. And now, based on the recent elections, it's actually an unsafe work environment. I think paramedics were even called to one location because they didn't have time to eat lunch and take care of themselves like you should. I talked to Mr. Frazier. There's been, about 20,000 plus voter challenges, so there's a problem. It hasn't been fixed. During the primary, we recertified with no
30
documentation.
seconds.
So I don't know if Dominique is present today, but I don't know how you recertify an election with no numbers. There's a lack of security in the chain of custody process. There was a release of personal poll worker information. There's excessive wait times, 2 to 3 hours in the most recent runoff. So I could keep going on. And then there's a budget proposal for this year of, I think it's what, 15 million? When we spent 28 last year with 4 elections, and there's only 1 special election this year. I mean, I think you get the trend. There's a culture problem and there's a leadership problem.
Time's up, thanks.
Within this department. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson.
Earl Ferguson, registered voter, City of Atlanta. I have 2 issues, so I'll be brief about the first one because it's been brought up before. There are many people, and I'm one of them, who are retired, have plenty of time, but are not physically able to work for 20 straight days. You really need to provide a way to use people that are capable, that are willing, but are not able to maintain physically that endurance. That's my first issue. The second one is I've visited most of the polling places during early voting, and I have 2 observations. One of them is it does not appear that you are accurately estimating the number of participants you're getting, and I recognize that is not an easy process, but I wonder what has been done to attempt to predict in advance the number of voters that will show up at a given location. And that also affects the amount of, not only personnel, but the amount of equipment that's provided. I can understand 2 recorders.
30 seconds.
Scanners, but the number of voting machines can be cut down probably in many locations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment period. We will move to the minutes. If anybody is ready to either approve the minutes or make some changes, please do so now.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Properly moved and seconded, and your motion is to approve both the special meeting December 6, 2022, and the regular meeting December 12th, 2022 at the same time? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. The minutes are approved. Thank you. We'll move to the monthly operations report for December.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Upon the request of the board, we have reformatted the operations report. We're hoping that the new format captures all the information, and we ask that if there's anything that we have omitted, that you ask us to add it in the next month's report, we can still make some revisions to that. Okay, we will start with the absentee division.
Good morning, Board. In the month of December, we conducted the runoff election. We spoke with various vendors, again, Tadnall, OPEX, HB Solutions, Fort Orange. We also participated in the risk limiting audit. We had approximately 13 batches that was included. That was 12 absentee batches and 1 provisional. And once we conducted the election, we essentially just wanted to retain the records. In the month of November, what I recognized is that we had no mechanism for having a full record of the oath envelopes. So in the December runoff election, each voter that submitted their ballot and it was accepted, it is bashed into their record file. And that is for the month of December. Right now, we're continuing to index, which we started in December. So we're indexing all those records from the November and December election. And I think that's all I have.
Questions? Mr. Wingate, I see you behind me, but not to the side of me. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Okay, thank you. Dr. Ruth, anything?
Thank you.
Anybody?
Glad to see that you're indexing
Would you,
documents to make it easier for you.
yeah, would you just explain very briefly what indexing?
Sure. So voter registration as well as absentee, we use a system called Rocket File, where any record we get into the office, we want to maintain that record electronically. And so in doing this, I spoke with Dominic as well as his staff, young man, one of his supervisors, Corey Henson, about using the scanners to maintain the records for instance, if you sent in your absentee ballot and it was accepted, if you want a copy of that, we can provide it for you. And just thinking ahead, because what we had was our Blue Crest system was supposed to have those capabilities, but because we didn't use it and because it wasn't fully operational, I mean, it just had to think outside the box.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the explanation. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work, and I saw you working with all the volunteers to resolve things, and seemed like a good working bunch, so we'll thank those volunteers as well. And we'll move to the next. Thank you.
On page 15, administration.
Good morning, board and citizens.
Good morning.
Our December report for the administration division, we will discuss as follows. For vacancies, we have the director position, and it's still being recruited. We have the executive assistant. These are being, applications are being reviewed. We have registration officer positions. We recruited 2 and onboarded 2, and we have a remaining 6 to be recruited. We also have the absentee officer, and this is being considered by our executive team. In regards to the preparation for the 2022 elections, back in December was our county's year-end closeout period. Therefore, we focus on receiving and processing as many invoices as possible so that we expend as much funds of the 2022 budget. We also focus on ensuring that the temporary Fulton County staff were separated from our HR system. In regards to campaign contribution disclosure reports, there was a report due December 31st, 2022, and the grace period was January 5th, 2023. And this information concludes the activities for December 2022.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, no questions. We'll move on to advanced voting.
Advanced voting.
Good morning, Board. Happy New Year. My December report consists of December 6th, we conducted a runoff election, very successful. And right now, we're currently engaged in post-election activities. These activities include researching, following up on responsive manner, any inquiries from the Secretary of State office, voters' concern and complaints, while continuing our established practice of reconciling. As part of our continual program, improvement program, we will be conducting a comprehensive review and lesson learned session with our EV poll manager and training staff to evaluate our effectiveness in delivering our promise in providing excellent voting experience to every voter. What have we learned? What can we do better? Based on the migration from electioner to Jarvis, we will be developing a new training material, manual, and training curriculum for implementation for this next municipal election. The new Jarvis program is geared to be faster and efficient processing to all EV staff. Regarding discussion of changing EV staff work schedule, we can do 2 things. We can maintain the current practice with EV staff work from open to close. This approach requires the least numbers of voters workers needed to recruit compared to staffing alternative. But we are evaluating the feasibility of offering flexible schedule, staffing days to the poll staff whereby work days and hours may be staggered to accommodate those with limited availability but still desiring to work. This approach will require larger working recruitment, of course, to staff and a higher budget. And right now we are preparing and planning for the 2023 municipal election. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your hard work during the election. We appreciate that. Any questions or comments? Let me just, I'll make one. Let me just say for the folks who have suggested and commented on the need for shifts for poll workers, we've heard you and we are looking into that. Obviously, implementing the changes during this election was a little too much extra to have to do, but now that we have this year where we can begin to work on changing some of those systems, we're going to attempt to do that. But I think it is important to be mindful that one can expect an increase in budget, and one can also expect that we're going to need to be very, very careful about what we do when we switch shifts and people don't show up and we have immediate needs. And I'm not suggesting that moving to shift work is going to make people not show up, but there's a lot of moving parts to that particular issue. I think it's something that we need to do, because obviously advanced voting is very lengthy and complex and tiring, and some people's comments are many of us who can work part-time, but perhaps not full-time. So we'll start updating on that as we get into the year, but we'll want to proceed very carefully about how that rolls out. Ms. Crawford, you had a comment? Question?
I just wanted to say that I thought that the early vote locations did a great job as I was going around to the different locations. And I wanted to thank you for getting all that going in the right direction, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okey-doke, next section.
It's for Election Day, I will cover that. Our election officer is currently closing out poll worker payroll. They're revising standard operation procedures, and they're also completing poll manager report cards. So each poll manager will get a report card of how their paperwork was completed and an update on their performance, just so they'll know what to do, what lessons learned for the election. And that concludes the Election Day report.
Comments, questions? Ms. Crawford?
I think that's a great idea about giving the performance reviews for the poll managers. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Let me just request Nadine, with regards to the report cards, will that be given to the board for review as well?
We can submit that to you. It's given directly to each poll manager individually, but we'll put them together in a file and send them to you, because we like to look for patterns to see if it's something that everybody might have gotten incorrectly, if possible, if that does happen, to fix something in training. So we'll provide those documents to you.
So when you do that, would you summarize those patterns?
We can do that.
That'd be
We
great.
can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Wingate, did you have something else?
No, that's fine. Summary would be fine, but if there's any particulars, I think that ought to be addressed for as well.
Right. Yeah, I was suggesting, to your point, that you would receive all of them, but they would do a roll-up of what their observations are, just so we can make sure that it's
Very
caught.
good.
Thanks.
No, very good. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Great, well, listen, also, thank you very much. You all have had a very, very busy year and implemented a lot of changes and managed a lot of difficult circumstances, including redistricting and change in staffing and lots of other things. And we appreciate it and I certainly noticed the improvements that have come over time in the course of the year, and look forward to some goal setting with you and your team about the focus that we want to have as we move into 2023 to prepare for big election the year after that. And we'll get into that in a more systematic kind of conversation at a future meeting. Next.
Okay, for elections, on page 17, I'll report for that as well. We decided to review all poll locations that have 2,000 registered voters. In order to do cost reductions, we have sent out a document to what mergers are possible for neighboring precinct locations. We also sent that out to all municipalities for their input to help reduce the number of polling locations on election day, to again affect the budget costs for municipal and general elections in the future. That was just the beginning of our review. We will continue to do that while we have some downtime to see what locations we can decrease that'll help reduce the budget overall. So that's really the bulk of what the elections division has done. So that's the conclusion for that.
I would ask that all the board members take a close look at that, because you'll know the polling locations that are particular to kind of where you live and your jurisdiction, to be able to help provide some input on that as we move forward. Questions, comments? Mr. Johnson?
As we're talking about these polling consolidations, can we come up with a plan to talk to the cities and organizations? Because it's going to look like anytime we move a polling location, anytime, even though we don't technically close them, we may move them, they tell us to move out, no matter what it is, it gets put on us to say, well, Fulton County is trying to restrict voting, or Fulton County is doing this. And so to avoid that, if we can come up with probably about a month in advance, which I know you already sent the document out, so I know it, but we are able to go around to organizations around the county and give them, I don't want to say a heads up, but do kind of a campaign to let them know this is why and this is what we're doing. And sometimes that's easier to swallow than it is if it just shows up one day. So
That's a great idea. So we did send it out to cities with maps and everything of that nature, but we can work with voter education and try to include that as we make changes to get the word out in the community.
and maybe we can reach out. It's something that the commissioners could help with if they're on board, in a way that they're on board, and talking to some of the city council members and mayors across the county. So, you know, they can help spread the word that, hey, this is what we're looking at and this is why. Well, matter of fact, this is why we're looking at it and this is what we're looking at it.
I'm sure Ms. Little will be more than happy to assist. We'll work on that. That's a great idea. Thank you.
All right.
Ms. Crawford?
If you could send us talking points on that also when we get calls from the city council people, that would be helpful.
Other comments? Dr. Ruth? Mr. Wingate? We good?
If I may, I'm sorry, I know there's a delay to this, but I know that we've had a lot of feedback about removing election day poll locations from our public schools. And the other issues, and I think it's even noted in that documentation, that some of the libraries are functionally too small to conduct efficient election processes. The issue is if we take those two elements away from future planning, it seems like, you know, we're going to have to really do a lot of work to figure out where do you put elections. So, you know, I'll be looking forward to, you know, as information from this year starts coming about as to what those ideas and recommendations will be.
Yep.
Yes, so in regards to the school, I agree. We try to avoid schools as much as possible, but unfortunately, there's a lot of locations where we cannot do that. So what we attempt to do is work with the school systems to make election day a teacher work day or a virtual learning day. So we give them the calendar as soon as we receive it from the Secretary of State and attempt to match the schedule. So we have the IGAs coming up with Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County Schools, so that's going to be part of the discussion to ensure our calendars match for the safety of the children at the schools. And as far as the libraries are concerned, for several locations, we did put in the memo sent out to the municipalities to help us find a larger venue in their city. We had some suggestions that we submitted, so we're hoping that the cities can secure those locations for us for the libraries that we are deemed as too small.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing those points up, Dr. Ruth.
Just to the points that have been made, has there been any thought to look at the super centers again? Or I know that most of them are back into regular business.
Yeah, because they're back up and running, it's hard to get them to, you know, secure the dates. But we will look back into that as we get closer to a bigger election for 2024 to see if it's possible at all. Even if we have to go to, you know, event centers, maybe something not necessarily the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but something that's used for venues. But we can look into that for the larger elections. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Crawford?
Could we look at a different location than Newtown Park? That is such a small room. It was different when we had the kitchen area, but since that's being used by the park facility now, that room is just inconceivably small to put machines and people in.
Okay, we can do that. We'll also try to reach out to maybe some of the churches in the surrounding area if they're a precinct, because if they are an election day precinct, we can use them for an advanced voting site. Sometimes some of them have a separate gym or a fellowship hall that could possibly be used, but we'll reach out. We will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the churches, because my location moved to a church in Buckhead, and it was very efficient, you know, for voting. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Really quick, when you send the dates to the schools, are runoffs included?
Yes.
Because they've mentioned that they never know about runoffs, and I'm not doubting you. I'm
Right.
just,
No.
I would emphasize runoffs as a possibility and maybe even re-upping with them if it looks like it's going to be a runoff. Because I know it's very easy for them to go and say, all right, we're gonna make these days on the calendar, these 4 election days, teacher work days or remote, but then they contend that they have to scramble when there's a runoff. Just FYI.
Right. So no, for all facilities that we use, schools and private, et cetera, they receive all the dates, including the runoffs. For the school systems, actually, we have to physically go in and make the reservation in the system. That actually gives us a reservation number.
Right.
And the runoffs are included in that. But they try to change the calendar for general elections, but we're also saying, can you do that for municipals? Anytime there's anybody from the public coming into the building, we just would prefer for it not to be, for the children not to be there. But we do make those, they are informed of the runoff date, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Ruth?
Just lastly, it just sounds like that we need to do a complete assessment of all of our voting locations just to make sure that they can accommodate, especially as we get ready. We've already saying we're going to expect a huge election coming up, and turnout is not going to decline, it's going to increase. And so we want to make sure that we're in a good position and ready for that.
Yes, we will do that, thank you.
I just want to add just a couple comments to that, because I always want to try to inform people who are listening about our processes and what we do. But when we select a site, there are a lot of criteria that are sort of necessary for us to be able to move into a site. Having adequate power supplies is very important. It's very, very electricity intensive and bandwidth intensive. We must have access for all people with ADA requirements fulfilled, and just want to make sure that we have access at all times when we have to open the polls, because oftentimes what happens is if we're in a place where we don't have the access and we're dependent on someone else to let us in at 5 o'clock in the morning, it can be a little dicey if somebody else kind of holds the keys. So there's a lot that has to go into what makes for an acceptable facility, in addition to the location and the size and how we move people in and out. And I just wanted to put that in there. But what I would do is invite the public at our next meeting to come with any comments about your polling locations and give us some feedback. This is the time when that would be incredibly helpful and timely. Thank you. Moving on.
Okay, finance.
Hello, everyone. In terms of finance for December, of course, we were closing out the year-end finance results as we were working with accounting on that to close out everything and get all invoices processed that we had received. So I have reported in the package for you the election results. As you can see, we had a significant underrun in 2022. As you look at our year-to-date results on the operations budget as well as the elections budget overall, we used the underruns to fund a December runoff, which the December runoff came in at $2.7 million. So our total cost for operations and the elections for 2022 was $25.5 million. We also anticipate that we will have $2.6 million of invoices that we still have yet to receive and to be paid related to 2022. As we continue to receive those invoices in 2023, we have requested the rollover of those funds of the additional $2.6 million that we need to fund those additional invoices that are yet to be paid. So those are the results of our 2022. As far as our proposed 2023 budget, we have operations budget proposed for $4.6 million, elections budget for November of 2023, municipal election of $6.9 million, December runoff, the possible runoff at $3.2 million for the municipal election for a total of $10.1 million. This is our current proposed budget for 2023. That concludes the finance report.
Okay, just the election proposed budget on this chart, it says 12.4 million. Is it?
That was in December when I created that monthly operation report.
Oh, okay.
Before we reduced the budget in requests that were made and different things that we went back as a management team and went back and reduced the budget.
Right, thank you very much.
And you all should have a copy of that at your stations.
This is the additional page. Thank you, appreciate that.
Sorry.
It's okay. Other questions or comments? Dr. Ruth, did I see you with something? No? Anybody? I know you all have been working incredibly hard on the budget, and I just want to thank you for the steady hand there and the work that was done. Folks might remember during our budget, you know, we had hoped that we would be able to kind of consolidate savings in order to fund the election runoff, and we had a bit of a gap in the budget there, so I'm happy that we were able to do that. And let me just say, I appreciate the effort that's required through the holidays and the end of the year to chase all the cats into the same room and get all those invoices in. It is not insignificant when you're talking about 3,000 volunteers, multiple vendors, people's year-end closeouts, and an ability to get those invoices in. And thank you for the strong effort that has to continue even though the election season is sort of over. So thanks for the work we don't see, but is really important.
Thank you.
Just one question. So the proposed budget is 12.4 million, but the operations budget is 4.6.
There are two pieces to the budget cycle in
Okay.
working with accounting. So the operations budget is the recurring annual budget items for like warranty costs and different software licenses and things
Okay.
like that, permanent employees. So that's the operations budget. The elections budget is strictly related to the municipal election in 2023.
Okay, and then, so the total,
So it would be the 10.1 million plus the 4.6 million if you were looking at grand total for the entire department. So that would be a total of 14.7 million.
Yep, so if you look at the sheet that's on
The
your right and
revised sheet,
flip it
which is the
over
reduced budget,
and add those two together, that should be 10.1.
that's the election budget.
So the election by itself is roughly 6.5 at this time, and we are still decreasing that as we work through trying to get some cost reductions in. But for the actual election, if the cities that have already told us are going to be attending are going to have an election, is at 6.5 for the election portion. That's-
okay,
is that
okay,
clear?
and that includes, you're saying that includes those municipalities that may not, that will be running their own elections, or no?
No, it does not include
It does
that.
not include?
Right.
Okay,
It does not include Sandy Springs, that will not have an election this year. It does not include Milton, that stated it will run their own election. And it does not include, of course, unincorporated Fulton County, and Palmetto. Palmetto also always conducts their own election as well.
so you anticipate it would be, that number would be reduced?
It will be reduced as we try to work through some things. We are still coming up with reducing maybe advanced voting from 3 weeks to 2 weeks. So there's certain things that we're still working on, it could possibly drop the price.
Okay, and we'll have more detailed discussion about that as we get into it. Any other questions? Ms. Crawford, did you have a question? No. Okay, that's it. Let me just also say that, you know, a big portion of these costs, you know, you mentioned the software licenses and things. Those are things that are not under our control, and when the General Assembly and Secretary of State's office select certain vendors for us to use, the costs get passed on to us kind of without debate, right? We can't make other selections in terms of what to do. So when we have a software license that costs $250,000 a year, that's not our choice necessarily, but you know, we comply with the decisions as they're made. But I just want to say that there's those kinds of components that are sort of fixed costs that we, you know, we can't deal with. But then there's other things that we can look at to see how we might be more efficient and do that. Also, one big piece of work that we'll be discussing, I'm sure, in more detail for folks, but we will be consolidating all of our office locations and our operations into our election central in probably the end of the first quarter. which will be very exciting to have everything in one location, everything purpose-built for election operations. And that will be exciting and probably have a few implications for early budget, but we'll then steady on after that. Okay, next.
Information systems.
Good morning, Board. On the month of December 2020, System Specialists worked on post-election procedures, which include equipment reconciliation, testing of all equipment that were reported to having issues during the November runoff, and separating such equipment that we cannot fix in-house. We send them back, get them ready, and sent back to the manufacturer. Then we did start arranging voting equipment and other assets that we have at the Philip Lee warehouse in readiness for the relocation to Election Central. And information system, we're currently also working with the WDS inventory system vendor for us to create like an event within that warehouse management system that will help us and assist us in moving from the current warehouse on English Street in Philip Lee warehouse to Election Central. Right now in inventory, we have 3,560 ICX BMD and 411 ICP scanners. That concludes the information systems report for December 2020.
Questions? No questions? Dr. Ruth?
Thank you so much, Dominic, for the report. Is there any plan to acquire additional equipment or scanners and as we prepare for 2024? Have you all done an inventory, and thinking about anticipating what's needed in the future?
Right, we are researching that. So we will, now that we have the true number of voter turnouts for Election Day, I mean, a lot of factors came into the 2022 elections, pretty much showed us voter turnout habits after changing SB 202 and things of that nature. So once we reevaluate all that for voter turnouts, we'll see if we need to increase our inventory, but we are evaluating it.
Ms. Crawford?
Do you expect any new machines coming down the pike from this SOS?
No, we have not heard anything of that nature. There is a new Jarvis system, which is going to hopefully, we went through training in Athens last week. Was it last week? So there's a lot of different things coming in that. Hopefully that's going to clean up the process of duplicates, business addresses, all those things. It's going to do a lot more than eNet could do. And we're excited about the program. So that's going to help us out with those processes. But as far as voting machines, I do not have any news on that.
Thank you.
I apologize. There is the poll pads. Those are going to be an upgrade that's going to expedite the process for checking, especially for advanced voting. It will speed that process up.
So there'll be new poll pads or?
It's an upgrade to the poll pads.
Oh.
Yeah,
So it's a system upgrade?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And just a follow-on question to that. So will there be extra cost to us for that in the coming year? And B, is that reflected in the budget?
We have not been advised of any additional costs at this time.
Okay. You might want to ask that question. Yeah.
And just one last thing. So in looking at this number of the BMDs and scanners, all of these are working properly. Do we have any that need to be repaired? And
Yes, so a few number of them needs to be repaired and then currently being sent back to the manufacturer.
And probably the BRE will recall last year in the budget, we did ask for some additional machines. I guess that goes back 2 years, but in this time frame. We're not able to get those resources from the Board of Commissioners. But I think, it continues to be something we ought to be thinking about planning as we sort of concentrate on, how many polling locations and sort of the other changes that we're going to make. I will also say, to the point about the Jarvis system, that was scheduled to be implemented around this time last year, which happened to coincide with redistricting, which became very, very difficult and unwieldy, particularly for the big counties. So it was delayed by the Secretary of State's office for a June runoff implementation, which I think then became delayed again as we go into this year. We are incredibly hopeful that this will be helpful in resolving some of the issues that come up relative to the voter challenges that we've been discussing. I think some of those are, fall into some other areas, but we're hopeful that we're going to start getting kind of true numbers from the Secretary of State's office relative to the implementation of that. That'll be a significant piece of work to get into, and we don't know what the time schedule is precisely for that implementation, but just want to keep giving context to things that are going on that might not be obvious. Anything else relative to that? Okay. Move on to registration.
Good morning, Board. I will be giving the report instead of Ms. Marshall for the month of December. The activities in voter registration for the month of December were as follows: processing voter registration applications, researching street issues, municipal street audits, processing registration issues, preparing notices to voter registration applicants, scanning and indexing registration cards and trainings. The statistics for registration for the month of December are as follows. There were 10,913 voter registration applications received. As of, I believe, at the time of this report, there were 755,345 active voters, inactive 104,812. Total of registered voters 860,157. The applications to be processed were 29,588, with 1,126 new registrants to Fulton County. The front desk operations had roughly 1,492 transactions, and there were no challenges issued during or requested during the month of December. This concludes the monthly report.
Okay. Questions, Ms. Crawford?
Just wondering, the reason for visiting voter registration, is that all three, that is the north, mid here, and south Fulton and?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Wingate, did you have something?
Yes. Let me just inquire. I'm glad to hear that evidently, based on this so-called Jarvis upgrade to ENET, that's going to provide some new tools or additional tools to help in this reconciliation of the thousands now of challenges that we've had that surround mostly, this appropriated address, labeled address, vacant lots, everything that I think that I've read in some of these emails. Is it logical to say that since it's going to still be some time from what I'm hearing with regards to this Jarvis conversion, can we provide continuing work now that the shackles of the federal election laws have been taken away because we're out of 2022 in a federal election process? Is there a way forward here to start providing some statusing on where a lot of this is at right now? I think I may be mistaken, and if I am, I'll step aside, but it just sounded to me like from that's being commented to that there is information in terms of where the process is at that needs to be relayed back.
Yes, I'll cover on that, since Ms. Marshall is out. Yes, so staff is currently working on those things. Again, there are like duplicates, for instance. The dashboard that our staff sees could say 400, and they're working on those 400. Yet we get a report from the public that says they see 6,000. Where they get that information from, we don't see that. So staff is hopefully Jarvis will solve that problem, because we have asked that question to the Secretary of State. Why do we only see this number on our dashboard versus what we receive from public comment? So Jarvis will hopefully solve that problem. It would also do the same thing with business addresses. It'll do a sweep of those. So all those things should hopefully come into play. But staff is, while we wait for that to be launched, and we are going to local training this month. They're around the state of Georgia. There's local classes for all the counties to attend to learn the Jarvis system. Staff is still cleaning up those files at the same time. But we hopefully will solve that problem, and we're working on it. It's those things are happening simultaneously, to answer your question, yes.
Nadine, do you have any idea when this Jarvis conversion will take place? Is there any thought at that at all?
Okay, it's February 6th is when it will launch. The training classes are through the rest of this month in January, and it will launch on February 6th.
Launches on February 6th. Okay, thank you.
And Nadine, thanks for that. So it launches on February 6th and training is going on. Have you given any thought to doing any mock elections just to see how Jarvis will impact processing and to actually see what that looks like?
That's a great idea. We can schedule that. Once we conclude training, we'll put something together and we will present that to you.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, great. We'll move on to the next piece.
Voter education on page 20.
Happy New Year and good morning, board members. During December, we started cleanup and began planning for the municipal election, events that are going to be taking place in 2023. So we began contacting schools, communities, nonprofit organizations, senior facilities, as well as to start scheduling those events. Also, we'll begin reaching out to the municipalities to schedule events before the voter registration deadline, which we have a little while since that's in October. We're also going to be looking at low voter turnout areas in cities with low voter registration to help with the planning of events. Also, our team assisted in the RLA after the runoff election. And we're also, the next task we'll be working on pretty much throughout the year because the certifications for deputy registers are only 1 year. So I'm going to start offering deputy register trainings either 2 to 3 times a month so we can start revamping and getting those folks recertified for this election year. I realized what I did not include is that we'll also be reaching out or setting up a meeting with external affairs to get all our marketing materials updated and getting all that stuff updated as well. And then also, since I serve as the legislative liaison, I'll also start following, since General Assembly started this week, I'll be following those bills. As I see 2 have already been assigned to me, so I'll be reading those and I'll keep our leadership updated as needed. We did clean up with our records, making sure I deleted folks who didn't submit their oaths and wouldn't really be accounted for as it relates to being a deputy registrar. So we ended our year with 400 for the year. We didn't have any voter registrations in December, and so we did a total of 2,359 for the year. The same with a lot of these, there was not a lot of activity, so I'll just do the total numbers if there wasn't activity. So we did a total of 958 recruitment as it related to, that's how many poll workers we recruited, 66 voter identification cards. Outreach events, we had a total of 530 on the year. Absentee applications, 435. And just mind you, this is a note that we didn't probably start counting the absentee numbers until probably mid-year because I wasn't including this initially. So that added, so that number might not necessarily be accurate. We did a total of 2,636 connections for the year. We had a total of 23,070 event interactions and 50 media inquiries. And then you can see the events we did do in December, the upcoming events that were as of that date that has since changed. And then we included the map where you can see the full event list. As I noticed, there's been a lot of conversation around the events being equal. And just a reminder, if you take the city of Atlanta out, which is probably almost half of our registered voters, we have about 350,000 active voters in Atlanta, with the next city being maybe 88,000. And so I think when you're looking at numbers in that way, the bulk of our events are in Atlanta. It's the capital. And so if you take Atlanta out and you literally put up North Fulton against South Fulton, the event, they're equal in terms of how much time we spent in each of those cities. And North Fulton actually has less cities than South Fulton. And it was still even as it relates to those cities. We are going to be working on looking at the population sizes of a lot of the cities to determine voter registration drives that can be done. So we'll be looking at that as we determine how we're doing events across the county. So for example, if City of South Fulton has a population of 100 and, I'm just making it up, 30,000, but only 88,000 registered voters, where are those extra people? Do they need to be registered? So looking at that, reaching out to planning and zoning directors and economic development directors to see what new subdivisions are going to be popping up prior to the October 10th deadline, and also working to try to get drives out there as well. So we're going to try to take that type of comprehensive approach across the county, as well as when we have some brainstorming sessions to see what other mechanisms we can use to make sure that people see it as being equitable, because at no point are we trying to just be in one part of the county and not the other. We are making every effort to be everywhere. And I think you can see that when you look at the map and sort of where we are. And then I also, again, reach out to commissioners. I never waited for any commissioner to schedule an event. We just, if they request, we will do it. And as well as with our the mayors and city council in the municipalities, since this is a municipal year, we'll be sure to reach out to all of them, as I'm sure they'll want us to make sure we're coming out there to get folks, do poll worker recruitment, and get folks educated on the election. And that will conclude my report.
Excellent report. Questions or comments? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you for highlighting the fact that I'm looking at the numbers and I just added them up, and you're right. Once you take out the city of Atlanta, the north versus south is, and I still think it's unfortunate that we measure everything north versus south. Let's just put that on the table. But if you were to, it is pretty even as to the numbers and the places. And again, I appreciate you highlighting the fact that you did more than just wait for a commissioner to reach out to you. You can't help the commissioners that actually do, and the cities that actually do, and the council members who actually do reach out for having you to come out and visit, and the organizations. So I think that you all are doing an amazing job, so thank you for all you continue to do.
Other questions or comments? Nope. Okay, we'll continue. Thank you.
Oh, that concludes our operations report.
Thank you. We will move on then to the cost to municipalities to conduct their own elections.
We do have a PowerPoint presentation to present. Okay, so in regards to the municipal election cost resolution, next slide, please. Okay, with the conclusion of the 2022 general elections, the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections has diligently analyzed election costs for all election types. The 2022 November and December elections are the first general elections to have all new litigation requirements in place to illustrate voter turnouts for advanced voting and election day for future elections. We reviewed voter turnouts for all election types from 2020 to 2022. With this data, our department will continue to streamline processes for efficiency and election cost reductions. But in the interim, election costs have increased since the municipal cost resolution was established. Therefore, we are seeking approval to have the resolution revised to not have the county incur municipal election costs. Next slide, please. Currently, the 2019 resolution outlines the flat rate, which is actually based off of 2017 election budgets. The resolution was to be reevaluated upon the installation of the new voting equipment, and it's actually based off of cost sharing with the county, which is in contradiction to election code, which is referenced above, that actually states that the county is not to incur costs for municipalities requesting election services. Next slide, please. The election budget has increased due to various factors throughout the years. In the memo that we submitted, we did a research on object codes from each budget, and this is just a few samples of how the costs have increased. For example, because of the size of the voting equipment, our rental of vehicles has increased. We now have to have 16 to 15-foot trucks, 26-foot trucks versus we could deliver the previous equipment in cargo vans. So that's a big expense. We did increase polling sites at one point, so that's more facility charges. And for 2023, in the last column, we noted some things that we're going to look at to reduce. So if we merge precincts, that'll start dropping the cost for Election Day. Printing, again, we have to have emergency ballots. The new equipment has additional recap sheets, so that increased cost for the paper. The new equipment also requires ink. It requires additional seals. So those type of things have increased costs throughout the years. Next slide, please. So because the 2019 resolution cost per voter was insufficient, the county actually incurred over $2 million in election costs. Prior to the resolution, the counties paid per percentages. That would allow the county to draft the budget for the year and charge counties based on their number of registered voters. This would allow the county not to incur costs, and we would actually refund the municipalities everything that we did not spend. Next slide, please. So our request now is to have the resolution revised. Again, to not have the county incur costs, we'll revert back to the percentage of election costs based on registered voters. We want to reinstate the refund if we do not expend all funds. Eliminating the cost per voter rate will allow the county to be prepared for fluctuations. If there's any legislative changes, any vendor rates change, we will not be at a set amount that would impact that. Not having that set cost will not, and also not require us to keep continually revising the resolution, because we'll just base it off percentages as we, for every election, municipal election year. Next slide, please. And while we are working on reducing election costs, we do want to emphasize that municipalities, although we are very happy to conduct municipal elections, municipalities do have the freedom to conduct their own election. There are many cost-saving measures that they can research if they want to go via paper or contract machines out from us. Those are a lot of things that we ask municipalities to explore other options for cost savings. And we ask them to contact their Secretary of State liaison for those options. Next slide, please. So the county will continue to review the budget to reduce costs, including for 2023. For instance, we went to Jarvis training. We realized that some things that Jarvis can do, there could be a position we can eliminate from advanced voting, because the system now does that. As we do more training, we'll figure out if there's something we can eliminate from Election Day. So those fluctuations is why we need the percentage, because that way we're not set to a rate that can change beyond our control. So that's why we want to revert back to the percentage-based resolution. And that concludes our slideshow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent report. And before we get into the debate of it, let me just recognize the amount of work that you've done, in particular, Ms. Williams, getting through the election, getting through the runoff, preparing our budget proposal for next year, and then dealing with this all through the holiday season where one might want to rest after a very, very busy year. So I just want to acknowledge this was many, many hours of work, many, many hours of meetings to figure this out. And I think what I would recommend to BRE members, if you haven't read the resolution, it sort of goes through that process, but just to kind of restate a couple of facts for the general public. Prior to 2019, the budget for a municipal election was divided evenly amongst the participating jurisdictions. In 2019, it became a cost per voter budget, right? So if you had 100,000 voters and it was $2 a voter, it was $200,000 would be your cost, right? Well, what happened is that the budgets changed then in the next election without a change, a new adoption of a resolution. I don't think any of us were on board at that time, or maybe we were, but that has sort of lapsed. And so Ms. Williams approached the first case as trying to kind of continue on the cost per voter. That caused a lot of heartburn. It is what it is. And if you look at this budget in some detail, you'll see the places where the increases have been mandated to us. And I say that not as a sort of pointing a finger or complaining to anyone, but I just want to make sure people really understand that there are certain things that are beyond our control, and changes that, I desperately hope the General Assembly will discuss and look at is, you make certain decisions and then you hand over the bill to the counties. Somebody's got to pay it, and it gets pushed down. So now what we're doing in response to some feedback is going back to just a pure division of what the estimated costs would be amongst the voters. And then if there are any savings or changes within that, then that will be refunded to the municipalities. But I'll just give you like sort of a case in point, right? This past year, the governor took away the probably 30 cents per gallon gas tax, which is in the process of coming back, but I'm sure people really appreciated not having to pay that, and we didn't have to pay that in sort of our budget. But if you were on the cusp of making a budget estimation on, what your fuel costs were going to be for running that many trucks for that many days, that would impact your budget pretty dramatically. And so those are the kinds of sort of intangibles that might occur in the course of, creating a budget right now, and then something happens in the future, or something happens with the General Assembly that we can't anticipate that would cause some cost. So I've read through this resolution, and I really appreciate the clarity of how it sort of describes the narrative of shifting back to just dividing the cost, because it's important for people to realize, in, I think it was 2019, Fulton County absorbed about $2 million per election, because the way the budget and the MOUs were designed failed to capture the possibility that those numbers might be insufficient. So we want to get back to a place where we're not paying for it. And if cities would like to run their own elections, they might have a smaller election, they might have a smaller jurisdiction where they think they can handle it in a different kind of way with less, less money, for example, or how they want to do it. Then we want to encourage them to do that. But for those that are going to participate, and that list is here, unless they opt out, those would be the cities that would be using this formula this year. Any questions? Mr. Johnson.
Just a couple. So a couple things I noticed in here is that let me back up. So has the notification gone out to all municipalities already that the increase is happening?
Yes, and yes, it did go out, not as early as I wanted it to go out.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it took us some months to brainstorm and figure out how to do this rationally. That's why we kept hearing different reports of the cost changing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized percentages would be the best bet. So between running elections and trying to get this squared away, we did send it out, but we would have hoped it would have been out earlier, but unfortunately we could not do that, but it has gone out.
And these costs will be effective for this calendar year?
Yes.
So one of the concerns that I've received is that, of course, some municipalities have already done their budget for the year, or we're going to be fortunate because some will do theirs in July, so they might be able to be prepared for it, but some of them do January to December. So if we're implementing it now, they would have to do a cost adjustment in order to cover the cost for the elections.
Yes.
Have we, or have you thought about, or maybe already set up having a meeting with the municipalities, that maybe with the clerks or maybe with the city managers, et cetera? Obviously, this is going to the board third week in January, next week, right? Yes. So it's going to the board next week. The board will take action because they have to do it before the budget, correct? So if they do it before the budget, that means they have to do it next week. Is there a way to work with the cities in order, because this is going to hit some of them pretty hard. If you're going from $2 to $9, $2 to $9 is pretty significant. especially when you already have a budget. Now, of course, you're coming up with $7 because, that's the difference. But have you thought about having a session or something with the municipalities that plan on using our services this year so that they can discuss, so you can explain to them, because they hear it, but they don't know. You know what I mean? We have a little different perspective than some of the municipalities will have. All they're gonna hear is Fulton County is going up. And what I'm trying to avoid is the backlash from the cities, because they're already overcharging at $2 now. They're already overcharging us, and we can do it cheaper, which is fine. If they can, that's great. But to go to $9, I know that's gonna cause some angst among some of the cities. So is there a thought to doing something like that?
We can meet with them after the BOC approves it, because the BOC could deny it, and it could stay where it is. But unfortunately, we do not want to be in violation of code, so that's why we're presenting this, to say, if it stays at $296, the county could incur costs, and we're gonna be in violation of that code that we're, paying for municipal services, election services. But we can meet with the cities. We did reach out to them for their input to see how we can reduce costs. We made suggestions on advanced voting locations, seeing we can merge those. We're double checking with the SOS if we are permitted to reduce, because we were under the impression that election day sites need to match municipal sites on election day. Are we allowed to reduce those sites for election day? So maybe some of those will, decrease. But we are asking their input for advanced voting to find a bigger venue. Only thing we can do is get their suggestion at this point to help reduce costs. But I do believe we're gonna still have to stay at the percentage rate. But like I said, unfortunately, we're trying to reduce as much as we can. But we'll have to see between this board and the BOC if we can even go to percentages, then we can possibly have that discussion.
This is almost a sidetrack because you just mentioned larger locations. I thought those were outlawed by 202.
No, if you're permitted to, SB 202 did not impact that. As long as it's a county building or a city building, you're permitted to use them.
No, I meant like State Farm Arena, GICC.
It did not outlaw those, no.
Okay, we'll double check. All right, so it's not passed yet, meeting with municipalities, implementation refund. So they do get a refund, though, if they pay $50,000, they only use $25,000 of service, we refund them $25,000.
Yes, we will. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to support the resolution of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners amending the cost to be charged to municipalities who authorize Fulton County to conduct any or all of their municipal elections and for other purposes.
Is that the right procedure that we want to do, is approve this particular resolution that is before you? Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Thank you. All right, approval of the 2023 BRE meeting schedule. You've seen that before you. We're not recommending any changes to the second Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. Any questions or comments to that, Mr. Johnson?
I do have one thing, excuse me.
You go first.
Yes. So on March 9th, the meeting, Assembly Hall is not available.
Okay.
On March 9th, the date I was given was March 16th would be available. If you all wanted to utilize this space, or I can attempt to find alternate space. Also, Assembly Hall is only reserved until June of this year to have our meetings.
We've only reserved it till June, and then after that, is it available, or we just have to do it?
It should be at Central.
At the new election.
Central.
Okay.
Now, if the board wants to do something other than that, please let me know now.
Okay.
So I can get the remainder of the year.
Okay, just want to make sure the board heard that then. Starting with the July meeting, we'll move our meetings to the election central headquarters, where we will have our own dedicated space and not have to go hunt for some. So then the question would be, first of all, would we like to modify the March date from March 9th to March 16th so that we can just do it here, or would we want to look for another location for March 9th and just deal with that?
I think the 16th would be fine. We're not going to have any election.
Any-
things to handle.
Okay, any objection to doing it on March 16th? Here, in this location. Mr. Wingate, is that date okay with you? Okay. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, so we will make a slight edit. I don't think we need a motion to that, to just change that March 9th date to March 16th, and make note that subsequent to the June meeting, we will move over to the new election headquarters, where I will not be walking to the meetings.
Good idea.
I'll be hitchhiking, but it'll be good. So is there a motion to adopt the calendar as just?
I do want to make one note.
Okay.
That the November regular meeting day should be a special holiday. It's my birthday, so that meeting has to be very short.
There'll be cake, okay.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
November 9th with cake, so duly
I make a
amended.
motion that we accept these dates for the 2023 meeting schedule.
Okay.
Seconded.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? There are none. Thank you. The motion carries. On to the Carter Center report, if we could take that up.
Okay, I am proud to announce and to thank our entire department and our board for getting a good review from the Carter report. And I will just read a summary from page 19. Overall, and within the parameters of the observation efforts, the Carter Center did not observe any election administration irregularities that would call into question the ability of the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections to administer secure and accessible elections for the citizens of Fulton County. The minor issues observed and noted in this report are consistent with the kinds of small hiccups that occur within any complex election administration process. Fulton County residents should feel confident these snags did not affect the election results. The aspects of the election process the center observes were clearly improved from 2020 and demonstrated the implementation of best practices. Finally, the Carter Center notes that the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections cooperated fully with the observation effort and demonstrated an openness to transparency and learning that is to be commended. So myself and staff reviewed the Carter report and made notes in each division for improvements. Those are listed in the document in front of you, and we will, make sure we implement those in the upcoming elections.
Great. Questions or comments? Ms. Crawford?
I want to commend the department everyone in the department for doing an excellent job in allowing the observers to see every aspect of the elections, and very happy with the report that the Carter Center has bestowed on us. So thank you all. I know it's been a lot of work, and thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Wingate? Dr. Ruth?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for all the hard work. I know this hasn't been easy, but we're getting better and better each year. And I did want to ask, thank you, Nadine. I heard you say that you all have reviewed the recommendations from the Carter Center and will be discussing them among each of the sections. And it may be good to prioritize, some of those things that can be implemented quickly as we prepare for 2024. And some of the things that were in the Carter Center report, some of them we've heard a little bit before, around operations and procedures, making sure those things are more succinct there. And that will also impact training. So we have Jarvis coming out and train. There will be some changes in training and operation and procedures that will need to be taken into consideration. One thing that also came up again was consideration for the privacy screens for the BMDs, and that may be a cost that might also impact, budget.
Yes, we are looking into that. There is a type of screen that can go over the BMD, but it is costly to get it from the manufacturer. But we'll reevaluate that again to see if anything has changed and see if we could possibly afford to do that.
Other questions and comments? Ms. Johnson?
So I want to say congratulations to staff for continuing to work hard to be the best. My hope is that this third party coming in and looking at us and not going by the newspapers and all the other innuendo that we get, that this gives us some pretty firm ground to stand on, especially as it relates to the Secretary of State's and their review. My hope is that they will look at this, they will look at our conversations that they've had with us, they can look at the various changes that we've made since 2020 and remove that cloud from the department and go ahead and make a decision on their review. And the panel will actually make a review instead of having us just hanging there. But again, great job to the department for continuing to do hard work in the face of adversity, taking the comments and everything that comes to you all and to us actually sometimes. But so I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, I'm going to not prolong this, but also many thanks for participating in this. This was requested of us, and as we have endeavored to continue to improve and be responsive to the request from the Secretary of State's office and the Performance Review Board, we were happy to participate, and we'll use this as some guidance as we go into our work plan for next year. I don't think we have to make a motion for that, right? There's no acceptance or anything, so thank you for that report. I want to move on. I'm cognizant that at least one of us has to leave by noon. If there is a need to go into an executive session to discuss either a personnel and/or a legal matter, would someone please make that motion?
I make a motion to move to executive session for a personnel matter.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. We're going to do that. If somebody can let us into that back room, I will let Ms. Williams determine which staff, if any, need to remain until we come back, but we will come back as quickly as we possibly can to conclude the meeting. Thank you. Okay, great. We are now back on January 12th from our executive session. I'd like to have a motion to return to the regular agenda from the executive session.
So moved.
Properly moved. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. We are back in our regular session. I would like to see if there's any motion anyone would like to make relative to our meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to name Nadine Williams. It needs to be published 2 times as director of the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. I apologize. As a finalist.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
There are none. Congratulations, Ms. Williams. You're not there yet, but you're on the way, and I will.
Finally.
What I want to say is thank you so much for the stepping up this year into a leadership position, for doing 2 jobs, both that as the director and the elections chief. You've brought changes that have been noticed, and we've all appreciated working with you. And look forward, assuming that we get through the rest of the process of Fulton County and working with you and developing an annual plan of goals for continuing the change that you've brought to the department. And I personally have so enjoyed working with you and look forward to working with you as we move into this exciting new year. Before you get to talk, let me see if anyone else has something to say.
Just thank you so much for all that you've done and kept all the balls from falling on your feet. You've done a great job, and I've seen how hard you've worked and how much you have accomplished this year, so thank you.
Anyone else?
I echo that, and thank you, especially for showing grace under pressure.
Mr. Johnson?
All that they said, plus. Go ahead, Mark, I'm here. Go ahead.
No, that's Karen. No, Nadine, yes. I think that by what you've just witnessed, that you have full support, and that we want to continue as a board to support you as we go forward. And I think 2023 will be a little quieter year, that a lot of the processes and things that you want to do and bring forward, it's going to be a good time to do that. So glad to have you. It's a positive way forward, I think, for all of Fulton County, and look forward to a continuing work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
The bad thing about going last is everything you thought you were going to say, somebody else has already said it. But I do want to reiterate the fact that we truly appreciate your standing in the line of adversity all this time. You've been nothing but graceful the entire time that you've served as interim director and elections chief at the same time. We haven't forgot about that. So we do have one, or at least I have one requirement. You got to take a vacation at some point in this first quarter, and then get ready, because we're going to have all kind of things for you to do, and we look forward to working with you to get them done.
Anything you'd like to say?
I would like to say thank you, and I'm honored. And I want to thank you all, actually. People did not know how much you guys help out behind the scenes with your emails and your field work, so thank you for that, because your input is awesome, and it helps us along the way. So I will continue to improve, and I thank you again. I'm honored greatly.
Thank you. All right, that's a great piece of business that we've done today, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. I can't believe I beat Mr. Johnson.
I know, usually.
He was drinking.
There you go.
All right, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. The motion is adjourned. Happy New Year. Look forward to working with you.